Go live with Hiilite. Here we go. This is going to work.
Here we go.
Yes.
I agree.
I'm excited.
All
Yeah.
right.
I think we should do that again, where everyone tells us how they're feeling, because things are a little crazy. I mean, we know what's going on. Everyone's feeling it. So out of five being you're feeling absolutely amazing, and one being you feel like crawling in a hole and dying, please let us know how you're feeling. I think I'm going to change my score to about a 3.5. I'm feeling pretty good, a little uneasy.
I'm at a 4 because, actually, you know what? We're on a live. We're at home.
And it's sunny.
It's beautiful outside.
I'm going with the 4 also, Will. I had a decent night's sleep. I got a new pillow a couple days ago, so that's been beneficial to my sleeping. And I got up and I had a good workout on our exercise bike, which we also bought last week when they closed our gym. I was like, man, we got to get some cardio options here. And my knees hurt too bad to run anymore in my life. So we got a good exercise bike, and our whole family has been loving that thing.
Fantastic. I think it's critically important to keep up the energy, keep up the happiness. There's someone here who just typed in a 5.5 out of 5.
Oh, I love
that's the person we need to like isolate and be like, okay, what's going on? I love the attitude. I love the positivity.
Yes, me too.
So, what do you guys want to talk about today? Because I think what we should talk about is potentially a positive spin and a positive angle. There's a whole lot of opportunity in these kinds of COVID times. Michael, having gone through one of these recessions before, I'd love to hear your input and how you guys weathered the storm, what the effects were, maybe what opportunities everyone in the Creative Cloud out there can actually leverage.
Awesome. So, this chat or this live started from Tina and I DMing the other day at like 9:30 at night, which is like every other day, it seems like. She's laying around doing her emails, and I'm filling out, replying to all of my DMs from the day. And anyway, we started bouncing off each other on the idea of this recession and an economic downturn and the challenges that businesses are facing when things pull back. And I started saying, well, I've been through this before. And she said, yeah, I've been through this before too. And so we thought, let's jump on a call and start talking about our experiences of going through a downturn market and what we did to still be alive 12 years later. This is the positive spin. So Tina, what was your experience? What were you doing back then? Were you guys married back then 12 years ago?
No, but
okay.
I can't believe that was 12 years ago.
I know. Can you believe it? 2008, the end of 2008. So, 11 and a half years ago now.
Yeah. So I remember I was working for an agency, and they were doing really, really well, but they were primarily focused on real estate clients. So they weren't diversified in their client, services business, and they basically had one person they were targeting. And when the recession hit, I remember our boss at the time, our CEO, he came and he said, what we're going to do is we're going to hire a bunch of people during this time, because we think if we have more hands on deck, that we're gonna get out of this. And about 3 months later, I think people started getting laid off. So it was really interesting to see the mentality of the time and what happened. And I remember just feeling anxious. I didn't know what was going to happen.
Yeah.
There were a lot of positives that came out of it too.
There were a lot of positives that came out of mine too. And I want to spend most of our time talking about that. But my experience at the time, I started my agency in 2002, and in 2008, I had 12 employees. I just checked my numbers, and we billed $1.5 million in 2008. And in 2009, I had to lay people off in February. We billed a total of $639,000. We went from averaging $129,000 a month in 2008 to averaging $53,000 a month in 2009. And I went, I did the same thing that the company you were working at, Tina, did. Mentally, I said in October, oh, well, we've had some slowdowns before. The summer of 2006, things slowed down and then they picked back up in the fall. And so I was thinking on these kind of 3-month cycles that, yeah, sometimes things slow down, buying cycles slow down, and then they pick back up. And so I kept my team employed. We were, hemorrhaging money. I was costing $100,000 a month, and we were billing $23,000 a month. In January, I billed $23,000 and I cost $100,000. So, you're losing $77,000 in that month keeping the team employed. Yeah. February, same thing. I billed $49,000. I had $100,000 of overhead and $49,000 in billings. But my mindset was, oh, things are going to pick up. Things always pick up, until they didn't. April, I billed $17,000 and, still had this overhead cost. And then it was clear after this run for several months that this was going to be a longer cycle than the normal dip. And I do believe that we're in the same situation now. We had a bull market run from the recovery, which started like 2010, end of 2010, mid 2010 is when things started to really pick back up. And we've had a 10-year run on good business, good economy, global economy. And there have been blips and things, some countries have struggled, no question, but the global markets have been strong for 10 years. And so we're really overdue for this pullback. But here I am 10 years later, I'm wiser, I'm richer than I was then, I'm happier than I was then, I'm better off 10 years later than I was then. And I believe wholeheartedly that the majority of us, and I don't want to say everybody because we do have a virus that is inflicting itself on the world. But the majority of us will be much better 10 years from now than we are today, and then what we were last year as well.
I fully agree, but I think that there's definitely some caution that we can put to it, and that hopeful and blissful optimism that I think a lot of entrepreneurs have needs to be tempered with. Let's actually look back and see, okay, what can we take advantage of? This morning, we actually had an all hands on deck conversation with our team and with exactly that kind of message. It's like, hey, look, we're optimistic about the future, but it doesn't mean that we should leave money on the table, leave resources on the table, and leave opportunity on the table. So we're going to tap in, and I think, I'm not sure about your government, we're in Canada, they've announced a whole bunch of measures that will help, that should help businesses weather the storm and help employees weather the storm. And so by delaying expenses, delaying tax payments, delaying, like we're gonna push on all fronts. We're gonna figure out, okay, what things should we be taking advantage of? Did you take it? What did you do? Like, what was available to you back then that helped you get to where you are now?
I don't know if anything, any of those kinds of things happened back then that I remember. I mean, there were stimulus packages and things, but I remember them being more focused on the auto industry and stuff. There were bailouts for the banks. There were bailouts of bad mortgages. There were government bailouts for Chevrolet and stuff, some of the major car manufacturers, so that they could stay in business because they employed so many people. I don't remember so much of that affecting me as a small business owner. But as you were talking, one of the things that was so critical that I think was so beneficial to me were these all hands on deck meetings that I did with my team during this time. I was an open book. I remember standing in front of the dry erase board saying, okay, in November of this year, we billed $85,000, and now we're in January and we're billing $23,000. But I still have $220,000 in my business account that I'm willing to spend on keeping you employed until we pull out of this. So that's where we are. And just being open and honest and telling people exactly where the business was financially and how long my time horizon was mentally, that was so beneficial. People freak out in their own imagination. And I think we're seeing a lot of this in coronavirus news right now. You know, your imagination is, oh my gosh, I just watched the movie Contagion and we're all going to die, because in my imagination, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But reality is usually far better than what we concoct in our imagination. So kudos to you for doing an all hands on deck team meeting to tell people what's going on in the business, so that they know that way they can make their own judgments based on reality and not their imagination.
Absolutely. So we've been having conversations with our management team, and at one point, as one of them said, "Look, you guys are ultimately the decision makers here. So you guys will have to make this decision." And I had pushed back and said, like, if I was in your position, not knowing what's coming down the pipeline, and I remember out in 2008, I was actually working for a firm where I joined right before the recession. The recession hit. All of a sudden, it's like, okay, things are in the red. Things are deep in the red.
Yeah.
The guy who was hired on right before me got laid off. And all of a sudden it's like I remember just feeling, for the entire duration, I was there for almost 2 years, being like, I don't trust like the company to do anything. So like, I think having everybody here, having everybody part of this decision, leveraging you guys and saying, look, here's the reality. I think not only we'll get a better, maybe less schizophrenic kind of solution, but I think it'll be at least a really well-informed one, so people can actually have visibility into what we're worried about and what we're seeing. That way there are no surprises.
Yeah, it's so important. And so if you're an employee, or if you're a freelancer, or let's say you're self-employed and it's only you, it's good for you to have your own all hands on deck meeting of reality. So don't just let your imagination wander. Open up a spreadsheet and put down your actual numbers. What are you going to build this month? What are you going to build next month? What are you going to build the month after? How much money do you have in the bank? What are your costs each of those months, so that you can calculate your own time horizon? Because reality for most people is a lot less scary than the nebulous future of unknown. And so get out of your own head as well, if you don't have employees or a team that you're working with. And if you're an employee, ask your boss for some transparency. Go in and tell them, hey, I'm really nervous right now. The economy's turning down, coronavirus news everywhere. What's going on at our business? I really want to be informed. So can we have an all hands on meeting? And ask for it. I think any good employer who hasn't done that already will sit back and say, you know what, Joe, that's a really good idea. We should do that.
They almost need you to do that, because they're nervous and they don't want to drop the bomb on you, and they're scared. And I know we look to leadership to make that first move, but I think you're so right. If you're nervous and you are freelancing, you're a contractor, you're working for somebody, bring that conversation up sooner than later.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure they're nervous inside.
Yeah. Yeah. And shout out to the business owners out there who have never been through it, because I hadn't either until the 2008 thing. Business owners, man, you don't know what to do. You don't know what you're doing. Will and Tina have never navigated the downturn of Hiilite ever in their lives. They've never done it. So they're going to do the best job they can to navigate the situation, to get client projects coming in still, to reduce costs where they need to keep the business sustained and going. But they've never been through it before. So have a little bit of forgiveness to your employers who are trying to figure life out just the same as you are as an employee. They're in a situation that they've likely never been in before either.
Absolutely. So I've been listening to a lot of information as to what different kinds of employers have done, and there was Simon Sinek. One of our employees posted a Simon Sinek. It was like a LinkedIn video, but it was like a really rough. It wasn't like the TEDx one. And he talked about different programs and one of them was a furlough program. And I remember at the firm I had worked at in 2008, that's actually what they ended up doing. They had a 10% time off.
Yeah.
10%.
Yeah.
It was, 1 day every 2 weeks. 10% forced time off.
Yeah.
So reducing their wages, but also, reducing their staff load, reducing their burden. And I remember that really helped the firm pull through. And on the other end, the firm continued to grow.
Yeah. So if you have a team of 10 people and you want to reduce costs by 10%, you can either let one human go and lose their job, and then yes, you reduce costs by 10%. Or you can take everybody and tell them to take 10% unpaid time off, but keep their job and still keep 90% of their income. That also reduces the overhead hit to the company. So I think getting creative like that, I love that idea. And it doesn't have to be 10%, man. If you've got to do 50% to stay in business and keep your people employed, then do it. That's better than no percent and everybody going home and the business failing. The business failing, this was the mindset I had. I got to keep my business alive, because if I ever want to hire someone back, I got to be in business to do that. The greater good is the longevity of the business, unfortunately, to the employees, because yes, they may lose their job for 3 months, but you love them. You want to hire them back when things turn around. So keep the business employed. So that's actually an opportunity. I think that there's a mindset there that's important as well.
I fully agree. Yeah, it's, I think, if you're right now watching and your company hasn't done the all hands on deck or hasn't explored some of these programs, your boss will likely appreciate some of these suggestions or some of these resources. So if you go to them, I think where we get so much insight and so much inspiration is actually from our employees who come to us and say, hey, have you thought about this? And sometimes we have thought about it and maybe gone a different way, but other times it's like, you know what? Maybe this is, like, if you're keen to have this conversation, other people will likely too.
Yeah.
So one thing that we did with the team this morning is with the management team this morning, we said, look, if we were to cut back wages, who can bear that cost? Who of you is not living like paycheck to paycheck? Yeah. And some of them are, and that's fine. We get it.
Yeah.
Who would not be comfortable? In which case, let's be mindful of everyone's individual situations, because not everybody can potentially, like, if we're going to make someone unbelievably uncomfortable, maybe we can take a bigger hit, which we're prepared to.
Yeah. I took a huge hit. I mean, we had in 2008, we had $500,000 of profit in the company. In 2009, $17,000 of profit. Now, as the business owner, I make the money off the profit. So that's how I made money. And 17 grand, I might as well have worked at McDonald's for 17 grand for the year, especially for the amount of hours I put in that year. I didn't take 10% of my time off. I put an extra 30% of my time in to try and keep the business going. But I took the hit. And I think that's good leadership as well. It's like, don't line your own pockets. Meanwhile, you send your junior designer home to live on welfare because you don't want to reduce your own profitability. That's not, in my opinion, the right approach. I think I fully agree. Take the hit first as the business owners. You're taking the risk. So when things are good, you make the most because you're putting in the risk, and when things are bad, you get hit the worst out of it too.
I think I feel like I'm going to cite Simon Sinek a few times here. There's leaders eat last. Right?
Yeah.
I think there are times in which that advice definitely makes sense. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but I think in this case, it's just recognizing the role of leadership, where we make these hard decisions, but also potentially sometimes take the harder hits. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. So maybe rather than focusing on some of these strategies, because I think there are a lot of people who are looking and watching, and potentially hopefully will watch us in the future, who are in the creative space, who want to know where the opportunities are. In every bear market, in every downturn, there are businesses that actually do ridiculously well.
Yeah.
In the downturn, what did you find? Did you find these niches and pockets of opportunity? And is there something that we should be looking for now?
So you got to get creative. And I was having a talk with somebody the other day. I don't remember. I think it was on a podcast that I did with somebody. And we were talking about how creativity is born from constraints. We get an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and a piece of chalk. Now go make something creative. Well, you have that constraints of an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and a piece of chalk. If you have an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper and a box of colored pencils, you have different constraints. And so you can make different art. You can be creative in different ways. And in business, this is a new constraint that we face. We have a downturn in market. We have a global epidemic or pandemic, they call it. So I'm learning new terms in this as well. So a global pandemic, we have new constraints that are forcing us to get creative. And with my business, here were a couple of the things that I did during this downturn. I thought, oh man, now I used to cost $100,000 a month, and now I only have, and I'm still costing that, but I only am billing 23 grand. So my mentality was, I'm making a $77,000 investment into my company right now by keeping my team employed. What am I getting for $77,000 out of this team that used to bill money for that? I'm upside down, so it's my own investment in this. What am I getting for it? Well, we rebranded. That was when we rebranded from Janda Co. to Riser. It was the end of 2008. So we rebranded and repositioned ourselves in the marketplace as a company, not as Mike Janda and his employees anymore. And so that was one thing that came out of that. We built a pre-Wix, pre-Squarespace style website, quick creation website.
Like an editor
thing. Yeah, it was like, we ended up building it on WordPress, but it was like a do-it-yourself, choose a template, and then populate it with content and launch it. And we started trying to sell those for like $1,500 and then get people into $30 a month hosting agreements and stuff. And it turned out that business sucked and wasn't good. But honestly, we probably did 20 or 30 of these things, and it was probably $50,000 worth of revenue that I wouldn't have had otherwise. It just wasn't good revenue. It was a lot of work and a lot of low-end clients, but I stayed in business. Through creative efforts, I stayed in business, and we ended up abandoning that after things started to pick up from our bigger clients again. We took all of the logos that we had done over the years that were not chosen by the client, and we repackaged those into a suite of hundreds of logo marks that we tried to sell to clients for cheap. So instead of a custom logo for $3,000 or $5,000, you know what? You want to pick a logo, pick one off of this library, and we'll only charge you $300 for it, and we'll put your text under it. So there were little things like that we were like forced into revising our strategies to stay in business.
So in effect, you actually innovated and practically disrupted a whole bunch of other industries, almost 5 years ahead of other people doing it.
Yeah, so it was some of that. Yeah,
it could have been the next.
Yeah, and we should have stuck with it.
Or Wix.
Yeah. You know what we also invented during the time? We invented the one-button nav. And shout out to my buddy who was one of my employees at the time, Andrew. We joked about it because we were like, how do we get all of the navigation on a templated website into one location when some people have 10 links and some people have 3? How do we make that work in a template? And so we thought, let's just make one button that says menu. And when somebody clicks on it, it drops down and shows you the whole menu. Well, lo and behold, 8 years later, every website on the planet has a hamburger nav in there that does exactly that. And so we didn't unfortunately call it the hamburger, and we didn't unfortunately get mass circulation on the idea, but it was an innovative idea at the time based on constraints.
How are you not pursuing this as like a revenue, like having, I think Instagram heard it here first. He is the inventor of so many different industries.
The inventor. Yeah. Hardly. Well, the truth is lots of people are inventing the same thing all across the globe. And so it's, yeah.
You said something about constraints, and the quote that always comes to mind for me is necessity is the mother of all invention.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, it's amazing how when we're forced to innovate is when we actually do come up with some of these ideas because we just need to. Otherwise, there is no tomorrow.
I saw some little meme or something that said, Thomas Edison invented the light bulb while he was in quarantine, and Albert Einstein invented the theory of relativity while he was in quarantine. It was some kind of thing like that. And don't quote me on either of those two things, but it was some, when we're in certain constraints, it forces us to think differently and to think outside the box.
To adapt.
Absolutely.
Yeah, adapt.
So
yeah.
Here's something we're seeing, and I'm wondering if you had something like this as well. That is, there are industries that do really, really well in recessions. So, like right now, I feel like payday loan companies, like money lenders, I think are going to do relatively well. I think essentially any insurance potentially. I think there is now like e-commerce, and we've helped a number of our clients start thinking and start implementing digital first strategies where it's now, okay, brick and mortar is, we don't know how long it's gone for. Mm-hmm. Here's your Shopify option. Here's your shipping option. Here is your digital course or some sort of program delivery online.
Yeah.
And so that's where we're finding opportunities right now. So while we're seeing a significant drop off in client load, we are seeing some clients actually dial up, which is unbelievably interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting.
Like that in 2008, 2009.
I don't remember so much what turned around. I was just such in a panic mode. I was being smart and working inside the constraints, but I was looking at my stock portfolio at the time, and it was cut in half. And, I was worrying about right here and not looking so far outside. But I do look out that way now. And, healthcare companies that are they going to do well in this? Probably going to do really well, because look at the quantity of people that are sick as a result of this. Drug makers, man, whichever drug maker solves coronavirus inoculation and gets it out mainstream is going to make a lot of money, even at a low margin. Walmart, man, and Costco. When was the last time the shelves were empty at Walmart? This is a business that's going to rock their earnings in the coming quarters coming up. And so there are certain businesses that are going to do really, really well because of this. And it's probably a good idea to target them. And then targeting ones that are going to struggle, that need to be innovative. If you can come into the karate school and say, okay, you can't do classes in-house anymore. For X amount of dollars, I will set you up with a Zoom channel and help you archive all of your videos so that you can give lessons through Zoom. You could do this with yoga or any kind of, or by the spin classes and things, anything like that, where we can set you up so that you retain all your students during this time and revolutionize your business in general. Because now the people in the aftermath of this, they don't have to go to the karate school. Now the karate school can have a global audience and not just the local people close by, because they've innovated and figured out how to instruct people no matter where they are. I think there's opportunities like that the businesses are going to be forced into. And if you can go to them and say, let me help you innovate and position yourself as the solution to some of those problems, you could have a great business as a result of this.
Absolutely. One thing, I remember pulling this up in around 2008, but I looked up and like, what companies started during a recessionary period? You mentioned, mentioned some. Here's one, General Electric. You may have heard of this little company called IBM, started General Motors in 1908, Disney, 1923.
That's crazy.
Toll House Cookies, Burger King.
Disney, 1923, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Apple.
Yeah.
Apple, it says, 2001. When you think about when they made their spectacular comeback, it was actually after the .com crash.
Yeah.
I think there's something, I think we could almost end there. I think we could almost say, look at what happened in really hard times. some really good things can happen. And I think if we have that mindset,
Yeah.
then we can focus on positive outcomes.
There's just one question. I know Tina wants to wrap up because we've got a whole lot of stuff we wanted to make sure we're mindful of your time. In-house Designs asks, should we cut rates during the recession days?
Okay, so I saw that question come in, and I have strong opinions on this. And the answer is, to me, my pricing strategy is based on market value of the work, on how much time it's going to take me to do it, and on what the client's budget is. And you balance those three variables and determine your price. Now, right now, what we're going to see is the market value is going to be going down on some of the things that we do, and the client budget is going to be going down on some of the things that we do. And so as a result, in order to stay solvent, you may have to reduce your pricing to stay solvent. And design lovers sometimes hate that mindset, but man alive, stay in business, people. And if you can make money on it for $1,200, but last year you would have charged the client $2,000, but now the client won't say yes at $2,000, but they will say yes at $1,200, and you can still make profit at $1,200, that's good business. That's good business.
100%.
I'm there with
100%.
you.
Yeah.
So in that case, maybe the punchline and the takeaway from all of this is stay in business, hold on tight, find every opportunity you can, and actually do good business in hard times.
Such a good summary. Awesome, Will. Thank you.
There we go.
Okay,
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Janda.
you.
Thank you.
All
everyone
right.
for
Thanks,
joining.
guys. So fun.